Hey everyone, my name's Christian Kron for 11 Hour Reviews, and today is our 200th episode. Now granted, some of those are shorts and whatnot, but it still counts as 200. And so, to kind of celebrate our 200th episode, we're going to do kind of like a talk seminar type thing today about how I see the future of these two consoles, the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, are kind of going. So first off, before we begin, I'd like you to use the chapters on this video because this is going to be a long one. I'm going to ramble a little bit, and to get to the point, use the chapters down below to get to the parts that sound interesting to you. But as you're already thinking, okay, this guy seems like a massive Xbox fan, if the title is why I think Xbox maybe will win this generation. And huge emphasis on maybe, but like, yeah, that's not kind of clickbait, that's kind of my opinion after dealing with the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 for a couple of years now. I kind of have some opinions, kind of have some thoughts, especially after the most recent showcase from Sony. But I'm doing this before the new Xbox showcase later on in June of 2023. You may be watching this a while later and whatnot, I don't know. But anyway. Now, I think it's important to first start off by letting you guys know that I am neither a Sony fanboy or a Microsoft Xbox fanboy. I know from the title of this video, it seems like, yeah, I'm the biggest Microsoft shill ever, or as some people would call them, Xbots, which I heard someone call Xbox fanboys Xbots as like a slur or an insult to Xbox fans, and I'm gonna go with it. I kind of like it. I like the term Xbots, and so definitely I think it's kind of cooler than they intended to be, but you know. No, I'm not an Xbox fanboy, nor an Xbot, if you will. Case in point, one of my first consoles was a PlayStation 2. I have a backwards compatible PlayStation 3, so that means I can play PS1, PS2, PS3 games, and I have a PS5, along with a PlayStation VR1 headset. I'm playing around with maybe getting a PSVR 2 when it eventually drops in price. And also, I just recently got a Vita. A freaking Vita in 2023. So, I don't want to hear in the comments that, oh, this guy's just an Xbox deal. No, I love Sony. I want Sony to succeed, but here's the deal. Some of the writing on the wall I've seen, some of the stuff I've been seeing happening, it's kind of making me go, yeah, I think Microsoft's going to win this generation, guys. And look, like, my favorite console of all time is the PS4, alright? An Xbox shill would not be saying that. And it is important to keep in mind that, yes, things can change. Look at the PlayStation 3 era. Sony was getting their asses handed to them by Microsoft during that era, but slowly but surely they started doing a comeback, and by the end of that generation, Sony has surpassed Microsoft with the Xbox 360. So, things can change. And you know what? I hope they change. I hope Sony wins this generation. I really do, because I liked Sony. But there's some problems I'm seeing, and so today we're going to get into all of that. Now, first off, let's talk about that showcase that came out recently. Woof. I mean, talk about bad as you could possibly imagine. Yes, there are people trying to say, oh no, it was a really good showcase. They really came in strong. And it's like, yeah, no, they didn't. Like, out of everything, the only thing that interests me in that showcase was that ninja game, Phantom Blade Zero. That looks pretty good, but here's the thing. The developer said, yeah, we don't have an exclusive deal with Sony. This could very well come out to Xbox. Okay, and then the other thing that was kind of interesting me is the Metal Gear Solid 3 remake which isn't being called Metal Gear Solid 3, it's being called Metal Gear Solid Delta. And I don't know why they're remaking that when Metal Gear Solid 1 more desperately needed a remake than 3. I mean, have you seen Metal Gear Solid 1 now these days? Woof. That thing is hard to fucking look at. And so, I mean, like, I was kind of interested in that, but again, Metal Gear Solid 3 is going to be playable on Xbox. Okay, and then we see a whole bunch of other shit. And then they end the show with Spider-Man 2. And it's like, okay, yeah, no, I am interested in Spider-Man 2. I like the first one. And I definitely want to get the second one. And it's like, that was it. We got a lot of dog shit in terms of live service games. I'm going to be talking more about live service games in a little bit. But with this showcase, yeah, we got Helldivers 2, which is most likely going to be a live service game. Concord, which was teased, definitely trying to play on the Starfield 5, but unlike Starfield, it's going to be an online-only, multiplayer live service game. Gee, that sounds exciting. And then we got Fair Games, which just looks like Ubisoft dog shit. Nothing about that trailer excited me. And then we got a shit ton of little indie games that, I mean, let's be honest, none of those are going to be like, ooh, I gotta get me a PS5 to play that. That's kind of like the stuff where when you see it for $5 on sale, it's like, okay, I'll grab it. I mean, like, that's it. None of those indie games were system sellers. And so, like, it was a really bad show. Almost nothing from first-party studios, which, honestly, with the heavy focus on live service, are we really missing that much? And so, yeah, no, that was bad. That was a bad showcase. Hour and 5 minutes, I'm not getting back. I could have just watched the 3 games I was interested in, watch those trailers afterwards, and gotten all the enjoyment I would have had from that showcase. And then, like, even then they announced the Q Lite or the Q Prototype, which is like a handheld system for the PS5, but it's remote play only. And it's like, okay, why would I spend all that money for something that I could easily do with my DualShock or DualSense controller and a cell phone? Like, seriously, there's nothing unique that handheld was promising that I can't do with this right now. Alright? Maybe if, like, the coming weeks they tease, oh yeah, any digital PlayStation 4 game, not PS5, PlayStation 4, you can have playing natively on the handheld if it's digital. Like, that would be a cool selling point. Like, okay, so PS5 games, I have to remote play, but PlayStation 4 games, I could just play right off the handheld. Like, that would be a good selling point. Or, you know, maybe have that a little bit more backwards compatible than the PS5. Offer something that you can't do with a freaking cell phone and the DualSense controller. Alright? Like, that's not enticing at all. It's visually appealing, but it's just doing nothing for me. The earpods, yeah, those looked fun, I guess. I wouldn't knock against those. But, I mean, so, yeah, the PlayStation Showcase was pretty bad. And one of the reasons why I feel Xbox is probably going to win this generation, it comes down to the two CEOs. Phil Spencer and Jim Ryan. Okay? I mean, you look at these two guys, and they are kind of operating night and day. And so, let's start off with Jim Ryan, okay? I'm sure Jim Ryan's a very nice guy, but he's kind of the second worst CEO in gaming history, in my opinion. The guy's doing nothing but bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. And, of course, the number one spot goes to Don Matrick, who almost single-handedly destroyed, buried, and decimated Xbox in the course of 1 year. I mean, this guy had some real baiter of quotes out there. And thankfully, he got replaced with Phil Spencer. But, I mean, Jim Ryan, one of the main issues is his resistance to backwards compatibility. Now, don't get me wrong, backwards compatibility is not the thing that's going to decide this generation. This is just kind of like an early sign of what's the problem with Jim Ryan. Yes, PlayStation 5 could easily beat out Xbox despite not doing any more backwards compatibility than it already does. So I'm not saying that that's the key thing that's going to decide this generation is backwards compatibility, but it doesn't help. And the only reason why the PS5 is backwards compatible with PlayStation 4 is because PlayStation 4 was doing gangbusters. It had over 100 million units out in the wild. It completely decimated the Xbox One, and everyone was pleading on their hands and knees to Jim Ryan, look, we really need to make PlayStation 4 backwards compatible with PS5, or we're not going to get any of that 100 million user fan base. And Jim Ryan probably begrudgingly agreed to let him put it in. That's how it feels sometimes, because that's the only reason, mark my words, that is the only reason why PS5 is doing well right now. It's not for anything they've done since the PS5 has released. It is solely because you have everyone, last generation, they went with PS4, and instead of jumping ship and buying all the DLC again for all the PS4 games, and buying all the PS4 games again digitally, and swapping out, they just decided to go with PS5. That is the only reason why PS5 is doing well right now. It's not for any of the exclusives. It's not for any of the services. It's not for any of that. Okay? Mark my words. But, I mean, he had that initial statement of, I don't think anyone would ever want to play Gran Turismo 1 on the PS1. People were not happy with that. And then he kind of rolled back the statement. And then even with their Netflix type service, which is kind of a mess right now, but I do think it will improve over time. They are doing some PS1 backwards compatibility, but it's on a very limited title by title base. And PS2, it's well, we already have the PS2 Classic, so we don't really need to touch PS2, which is a terrible thought process. And then PS3, it's oh yeah, you're just streamed that, and there was such an uproar that it's okay, now after we've launched the service, we're going to kind of start looking into seeing if you can do PS3, but not disc-based backwards compatibility, just you could install it on your system type of emulation digitally, and it's just a whole mess. But the one thing that really is hurting PlayStation 5 this generation is the PlayStation VR 2. And when they announced that, it was okay, cool. This will be interesting. It has 4K screens. The controls look great. And from a technical aspect, the PlayStation VR 2 does look outstanding. Here's the problem. PlayStation VR 1 only had an install base of 5 million units in the wild. Now, let's assume that 500,000 got damaged beyond control and they're unplayable, because I've seen quite a few damaged units out there. So let's mark that down to 4.5 million units. So theoretically, there's about 4.5 million people who have jumped on the PlayStation VR 1 bandwagon. And so what do you do as CEO of a company that is one of the few companies actually dipping their toe into VR and actually trying to make it a viable thing to continue on with? Well, fuck over the 4.5 million users that already jumped on the bandwagon and say, hey, guys, sorry, you have to buy our over $500 kit that you also need to get with the PlayStation 5. Now, here's the thing that royally pisses me off. It's the fact that they said, oh, well, the PlayStation VR 2 is just too advanced. There's no way we could possibly do backwards compatibility with PlayStation VR 1 games. But here's the thing. All the PlayStation VR 2 needed was 7 LED lights and the requirement that you have to keep the old controllers and camera. That's all it needed. Because, here's the thing. this system right here, the thing that runs all PSVR 2 games, can also run all PSVR 1 games. The system can handle backwards compatibility. The only reason why the headset's not backwards compatible is because they deemed it so. With a week's worth of work, maybe, and the addition of a couple LED lights and a switch to switch them on and off between PSVR 2 and PSVR 1, they could have easily made that backwards compatible with the first generation of PlayStation VR 1 headsets. And with that thought process, everyone who had PSVR 1 would have sold their PSVR 1s to help cut down the insanely high cost of PlayStation VR 2. Because at one point in time, it cost more than the fucking PS5 did. Okay, then they raised the price of the PS5 and made it so that they were about the same price. And so it's absolutely ridiculous how they rolled out PlayStation VR 2. But there's other things. Backwards compatibility is not the only thing that is hurting Sony, okay? The other thing that's hurting Sony is, one, how they rolled out the PlayStation 5. Basically, they had absolutely no community or customer support beforehand. They were keeping crucial need-to-know information to their chest until the last couple weeks or last month. Case in point, the simple notion of, can it run offline? I swear, that shit pissed me off. We didn't know until like a month or two before it was to be sold if this fucking piece of shit could run offline or not. Thankfully, it can. And the PS5 isn't a piece of shit. I'm just a little bit upset that Sony wasn't fucking telling us what its system could do. We didn't really know how backwards compatibility was going to work until like a month before the PlayStation 5 came out. Alright, other little things like, the fact that you couldn't have any PlayStation 5 games on anything but the pathetically small internal hard drive of 600 gigabytes. You couldn't use the solid state drive for like a year. You couldn't put them on external regular hard drive for like a year. That shit was fucking infuriating. And so little things like that have really hurt Sony. Whereas Microsoft, when they released their console, you could store Xbox Series X games on an external hard drive like from day one. Yeah, they had a little bit more space. Yeah, you could contact Xbox. I actually did this. I made a video about it. I said, hey, will the Series X be playable offline? And surprise, surprise, they got back to me and go, oh yeah, it's a lot like the architecture of Xbox One. So since Xbox One can play offline, the Series X is going to be playable offline as well. It's going to work exactly like the Xbox One. Okay? Like, gee, that's kind of nice when you actually answer your customer base. But that's not the biggest issue with PlayStation. You could forgive the lack of backwards compatibility. You could forgive the really obnoxious not letting fans and customers know what the hell's going on. But the one thing that's probably killing Sony is Jim Ryan's incessant focal need to go all live service games. Alright? Jim Ryan is obsessed with trying to get a successful live service, games as a service type project, okay? Because Jim Ryan, he wants his Fortnite. He wants to be able to say, yes, this one game made us $2 billion last month, like the head of Epic does with Fortnite. Because Fortnite is a money-making machine. It just prints out money for Epic. Epic really doesn't have to do anything that much with Fortnite. And Jim Ryan is staring at Epic and he's just like, I want that. I want my Fortnite. And so what does he do? He announces that we are going to launch 10 live service games by 2026. Which is one of the dumbest fucking things a company can do. Because if you've looked at live service games recently, they have all been crashing and burning like their own individual Hindenburgs. Okay? It is pathetically sad seeing week after week another live service game crashing and burning like no one's business. And in order to see if a live service game actually takes off, you need to give it at least a year to kind of see if it takes off. Alright? And he's launching 10 in the span of 3 years tops, more like a year and a half now at the point of this recording. And so basically, that is such a dumb move, because you're not giving any of these 10 games the chance to breathe. You're just throwing shit at the wall and expecting one of them to stick, which tells me they are expecting most of those to crash and fail. That's all that tells me, is that Jim Ryan is expecting a lot of these games to crash and burn, because he just needs one to be successful. Screw the studio, screw the hard work they're doing. As long as he can get one successful, then it'll be a success. And you look at other games that have somewhat of a live service model, like Dreams. Dreams is shutting down. Okay, so that was a success. Then you also look at Blood Hunt. That's getting shut down. That was a live service that was launched on PlayStation 5. And they keep buying studios that are entirely focused on live service games. Like, it was exciting to hear that Jade Raymond and her studio, Haven Studios, got bought out by Sony. It was going to be a first-party Sony studio. Like, oh, cool, you got Jade Raymond. And then immediately they announced, yeah, Jade Raymond's going to be working on online-only multiplayer live service game. It's like, thank you for wasting that talent. And we saw the trailer, Fair Games, with a $sign in the S, and it looks like dog shit, okay? It doesn't look fun at all. It looks like Ubisoft vomit, alright, with cliche characters that are supposed to be visually striking looking, but they look like every other fucking character that has come on the scene in the past 10 years. There's absolutely nothing exciting about that trailer that they launched for Fair Games. Fireworks Studio was bought in order to make, wait for it, a online-only live service multiplayer game. Okay. Then we go on to Guerrilla. Guerrilla is shifting focus to, you guessed it, a live service game. Are you people seeing a pattern here? And yeah, you get a couple of throwaway comments like, oh, well, we're not turning our back on single-player games. But let's face it, you're turning your fucking back on single-player games when you're making every single studio focusing on live service games. And by the way, we lost how many live service games last year alone because no one's playing them anymore. The only people that are into live service games are already committed to Fortnite, Call of Duty, Apex Legends, and a handful of others. That's it. The live service game market has been completely gobbled up, alright? I don't think there's any live service gamers out there. It's like, gee, I really want to get in a live service, but just there's no game that's really calling for me, alright? Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention that Sony's making a spin-off Splatoon online live service game that with Square Enix. Gee, yeah, I'm sure that's going to be a huge success. Yeah, I'm positive that is going to be a success. Please come back here in a year when that crashes and burns, and I'm going to tell you, I told you so. Because I'm telling you right now, that Foam Stars thing, Foam Wars, whatever the fuck that thing is, that is going to crash and burn so epically bad, you're going to hear the thunderclap when it hits the ground. Oh yeah, and then Sony has been doing absolutely nothing with their buying power. We keep hearing rumors that they're going to buy something big, they're going big acquisition, and then we don't hear anything. They buy little tiny studios, which is nothing wrong against buying a smaller studio. That's great. That's how a lot of the best studios began. But when you have someone like Microsoft buying Activision and Bethesda, Sony, you need to kind of step it up, and in between the 10 little micro studios you're buying, buy something big. But do they buy EA? Do they buy Square Enix when it actually was decidable? No. They buy Bungie. And then they say, oh yeah, Bungie's not going to be making exclusives for us. And we're going to let them do their own thing. And they're going to help us work on our live service multiplayer infrastructure with all of our other games. And you blew how many billion on that acquisition? And it's like people say, oh, well, they're looking at buying Square Enix now. Yeah, maybe they should have bought Square Enix when it was worth a damn. When it had Tomb Raider and Deus Ex. And it had a whole bunch of Western companies that supplemented Final Fantasy. Now, all they really have for the West is Final Fantasy. And yeah, they are considerably cheaper now. But I mean, I know there are some Western gamers going like, oh, Square Enix has all these RPGs that we love. Okay, to a casual consumer, can you name something besides Final Fantasy? If you can't, my point's been made. So yeah, Sony's been going all in for the live service bullshit. And that's why I think over time, you're going to see their sales start plummeting down and down and down. They're doing great sales right now because of the goodwill the PlayStation 4 got. And only the goodwill the PlayStation 4 got. That is it. That is the only reason why Sony's doing okay right now. It's not for any of the bullshit they've released thus far. Yeah, you could say Horizon Zero or Horizon Forbidden West and God of War really helped with sales. But guess what, Sherlock? Those were available on the PlayStation 4. Now, over on Microsoft's end, let's talk about Microsoft now and why I think they're probably going to win. And yes, they had a bad couple of weeks, especially with RedFall. And do not mistake me when I say that needed to happen. Don't mistake me for being one of these Xbots where it's like, oh, Redfall needed to happen because that was all part of their plan. Okay? They were planning on this. They wanted it to fail. I'm not that fucking stupid, okay? No. Redfall needed to fail because Redfall deserved to fail. Alright? I could have told you when it was first announced that that shit was not going to work. Okay? And then there were the people, they were like, hopefully optimistic that it was going to be a good game, all because Arcane Studios was making it. And Redfall needed to fail because Arcane got full of themselves to high hell. Okay? All you have to do is look at Deathloop. Remember Deathloop? You know, that game where every single major gaming journalist gave it a perfect 10 out of 10 and perfect 5 out of 5. But suspiciously, when you go in the reviews of these perfect 10 out of 10 scores and 5 out of 5 scores, you see reviewers complaining about, oh, well, it was really buggy, it crashed on me numerous times, the AI wasn't that smart, I died ridiculously because of bugs so much, the weapons had problems with having no kick, but it was a perfect 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5 game. Yeah, right. I mean, after the whole bullshit with Deathloop, and I'm not saying Deathloop's a terrible game, I have it on my wall, I'm going to review it eventually, but just, there's a certain point when you can smell bullshit, and Arcane Studios, when they got perfect 10 out of 10 scores for their game Deathloop, it was like, oh, I guess we don't have to really do that much work on our next game, because people just flat out universally loved this, and we kind of screwed up here, and here. So, you know what? Our next game is Redfall. We don't have to put that much effort in, because we're probably going to get a guaranteed 8 or 9 out of 10. And the rest is history. So, thankfully, Redfall crashed and burned. Also because it was an online-only game where you're fighting against AI-controlled bots. It brings a smile on my face anytime I see a game like that crash and burn and fail. Because there is absolutely no fucking reason to have an online-only game with a game that has you go up against AI-controlled bots. Absolutely no reason. I am so happy with you people for not buying Redfall and making that company suffer. Any company that releases shit like that needs to suffer. You want to make an online multiplayer game where you're fighting against other people? Fine. Go right ahead. Be my guest. But you dare peddle AI-controlled bot online-only shit to me anymore? Your shit's going to suffer. Alright? I am so fucking sick of that setup. Now, on Microsoft's end, their backwards compatibility is mwah, beautiful. It's not perfect, it has its issues, but it is outstanding. You have over 60 original classic Xbox original games. I want to call it Xbox One, but the shitheads at Microsoft can't name their consoles worth a damn. That's my one major criticism with Microsoft. They can never name a console right. And so the original Xbox, there's 60 games that are available on the Series X or S that have been upgraded. That's one of the coolest things about their backwards compatibility is it has auto HDR. It's been upscaled to 4K resolution. It has all these different V-syncs and filtering effects that you didn't get with the original game. So you're kind of getting the best possible version of these games through the backwards compatibility program. And it is awesome. You have over 400 to 500 360 games, and most of them are pretty awesome 360 games. And then you have all Xbox One games with the exception of Kinect games, and then you have the new generation of Xbox games. Not only that, but their next-gen upgrade system is a lot more streamlined than Sony's. Now, this isn't a deal breaker for me, but I mean, when you're just adding things up, the little cuts kind of together bring Sony down. And Microsoft is just an update to the game. You don't have to re-download the game again. You just get the update and it upgrades your game to next gen. That's it. And it's really nice. Sony, on the other hand, it's like, oh, I see you have a PlayStation 4 version. You're going to have to download that again. And then you're going to have to upload your save from the PS4 version to the PS5 version. So, at one point in time, you need to have both versions of the game on your console. And it's like, look, I don't want to knock Sony for that, but at the same time, I gotta knock Sony for that. So, their backwards compatibility has been really awesome. But then you look at their acquisitions, and everyone was kind of saying that, like, oh, Xbox buying Activision was such a blow for Sony. I have to disagree. Like, honestly, with Activision, I don't think Sony's going to miss that much. Yeah, they're going to miss Call of Duty, but Microsoft has guaranteed that they're going to be getting Call of Duty for at least 10 more years. And then Diablo, well, I think Diablo's overrated, but I mean, still, there are fans of Diablo, so it's like, that they'll feel that eventually. But no, what Sony fans are going to feel is Bethesda. The Bethesda acquisition was such an earth-shattering blow to Sony. I cannot stress that enough because, yeah, you're starting to see it with Starfield because Sony fans, they were looking forward to Starfield, and then when Xbox bought Bethesda, Starfield became exclusive to Xbox. And Sony fans are still feeling that. You can see it with that new live service game that Sony's trying to make. It was very clear, hey, you don't have Starfield, you have Concord. Difference is, Concord's a live service bullshit, whatever, and Starfield is Starfield. But I mean, it's not just Starfield that Sony fans are going to be reeling from. It's the next Doom game. It's the next Fallout game. It's the next Elder Scrolls. The next Dishonored. The next Wolfenstein. That Indiana Jones game that Machine Games is working on. They're going to feel that because that's going to be an Xbox exclusive. So, Bethesda's acquisition is really going to hurt Sony in the long run. More so than Activision. Now, in the very, very long run, sure, Activision will probably start really giving Microsoft the gains that it needs. But, I mean, honestly, Call of Duty's been guaranteed. Diablo's going to be coming out PS5. And so, I don't see any problems with Activision for the near future. But Bethesda, that is going to sting every time they announce something from Bethesda to Sony. Because Sony had Bethesda for years, and now, not no more. And then speaking of Activision, the Activision deal is scooting closer and closer to being finalized. You keep hearing of like little tiny places accepting it, like, you know, South Korea just accepted the deal, and like, you know, English CMA is really finding it. It's all a bit technical, but I think ultimately they are going to get the deal. And I think the coolest thing about the Activision deal isn't that they're getting Call of Duty. It's the fact that they've said that if they get the Activision deal, they're going to let Call of Duty rest for a couple years in between each one. And they're going to take all those support teams and go, hey guys, you can now make your own IPs. And these are support teams like Beanox, Raven, and to my surprise, Radical Entertainment is still around. I thought they shut down in like 2014. No, they became a support studio for Activision. And so to think that Radical Entertainment could make a new prototype game, or they could go back and make like a new Hulk game, a new open world action game. Radical Entertainment had some really awesome games, and now that Xbox is going to these support studios and going, hey guys, you can make that sequel to Singularity, you can make that sequel to all those old games you guys used to make. That is the exciting thing about Activision that I am most excited about. Honestly, when they announced that they bought Activision, I didn't like it. I did not want them to own Activision and Bethesda. But when they started saying that, yeah, we're going to let some of these Call of Duty support studios start making original IPs again, like, I screamed like a little girl. I was so excited.
Astronaut Fred Randall.
And so because of all of this freeing up of support studios, you're looking at potentially over 50 development houses for Microsoft. You heard that right. All over 50. Now, some of these are support studios that don't make games, but that is 50 development studios. Sony has like 20 tops, and a lot of those are just support studios and port studios. One's a mobile game studio, so like it's more like 12 to 15 for Sony, but Microsoft said it's like going to be 35 to 45 studios that are making games, and this is where the green wave comes in. All right, I am of the opinion that Microsoft is going to be coming in with a green wave of games that is going to decimate Sony's fan base. Because yeah, you could say it's quality over quantity. Yeah, sure, Microsoft will have the quantity, but Sony's going to have the quality. Right now they have quality, but do you think they're going to still have that quality when it's live service after live service after live service game? Nuh-uh. People are going to laugh those out of the room. You might get one successful one. With the way they're releasing 10 in the next 2.5 years, there's only going to be like one successful one out of those. But Microsoft, they're going to start releasing 5 games a year. And if you give each development crew 5 years, that's almost 10 games a year. So for every Sony's 2 game they release in a year, maybe 3 if you're lucky, you're going to get 10 from Microsoft. And at that point, those 10 could all suck. You're going to have a little kid who just got $500 to drop a new game system. He's going to see that and go, huh, they have a lot more exclusives than Sony does. And they're going to go with Microsoft. This is why I believe that Microsoft is going to potentially win this generation. Because they are about to have more studios than double of what Sony could if they split every studio into 2. And there will always be those who choose quantity over quality. And yes, there will be those who choose quality over quantity. And the future for Microsoft actually looks really exciting right now, because you have things like Starfield, Doom, Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Gears of War, Hellblade 2, Perfect Dark, Fable, Outer Worlds 2, Halo, Avowed, a potential new Vegas 2, and then the potential return of Prototype, Singularity, and I mean, that's just the stuff we know about. We don't know what Compulsion Games is working on. We don't know what some of the studios are working on. So, Microsoft has a lot coming. You look at Sony's side, I'm looking forward to Spider-Man 2, maybe Wolverine. I'd like to see what Santa Monica's new IP is. Apparently it's going to be a science fiction, so that'll be kind of cool. The inevitable Ghost of Tsushima 2, that'll be awesome. Maybe what Bend Studio is working on and what Bluepoint Games is working on, and that is it for what's exciting over at Sony's end. Because you want to mention Naughty Dog? Really? After the horseshit they pulled filing YouTuber content creators' rights in 2020, Naughty Dog's next game is going to bomb like a fart in church, okay? They are probably a dead company now. After the dog shit that they pulled with YouTube content creators in 2020. You don't know what I'm talking about? Look it up. It was blacklisted from all gaming journalist sites. So you better look it up on YouTube, because they were pulling some really shady, evil shit on YouTuber content creators back in 2020. And then lastly, Microsoft has an opportunity here to pull a 2013 with Sony. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen, because a lot of times these like showcases are prepped like a month in advance, and so it's probably already set up when Sony released theirs. But I mean, if they rushed and really tried to deliver on their showcase, they could probably have another 2013 situation where Sony just decimated Microsoft. Microsoft didn't put really any effort into their showings, and then Sony just hit him with a sledgehammer over and over again. And now that Sony has come out with a bad showcase first, Microsoft could come in and go, Hellblade 2, here's the release window. Hey, Game Pass? You guys heard of Game Pass, right? We're going to give everyone 1 free month of Game Pass who puts in this code right now. That would be a huge thing for Microsoft to do. They could show off gameplay for Avowed. And show off gameplay. That was one of the biggest criticisms of Sony's showcase, is that they weren't showing off that much gameplay. Microsoft could just come in and show off gameplay like, hey, here's a little bit of alpha gameplay of Elder Scrolls. It's still years away, but we just want to give you a little like minute tease of the alpha gameplay that we're working on. Okay, a little further slice tease of like the blocks working out or something like that. You could show off, you know, the new season of Halo 4. Show off Perfect Dark finally. Show off Fable. I mean, like, and that's just the stuff we know about. They could also do the CGI teaser reveals of like the new Gears of War game, or the other game that the Coalition's working on. They could show off, you know, the new Indiana Jones game, or they could show off, you know, the inevitable Wolfenstein 3 that Machine Games said they wanted to eventually make. There's so much potential with Microsoft dominating Sony with this showcase. Now, will they do that? No, it's kind of iffy right now. So, with all that said, again, I want to reiterate, things can change. Microsoft could screw the pooch, Sony could come out on top, they could change their ways, they could get a new CEO, which I think would be the smartest move for Sony to do right now. But I don't see that happening, but it is possible. And I would like Sony to succeed. I absolutely love the PlayStation 3, the PS4. Only reason why I have a PS5 is because it's backwards compatible with PS4. I loved my PS4. I actually like the UI better than the PS5, to be completely honest. And I'm kind of liking the PS4 control a little bit better than the DualSense. But so I love PlayStation. I don't want them to fail. But they are not making it easy on themselves. They are really pushing me into the arms of Microsoft. And I don't like that, but at the same time, Microsoft's been doing pretty good this generation. So, I know a lot of people are thinking, oh, Microsoft's on the ropes because of the last couple of weeks. That was nothing. After 2013, that's child's play. Okay? 2013 was terrible for Microsoft. They nearly went out, not Microsoft, but Xbox nearly went out of business in 2013 because of that shit. Anyway, that's been my thoughts on recent couple of weeks. Why I think Xbox may win this generation. Emphasis on may. Sony could turn things around. And so yeah, what do you guys think down below? Do you like that Sony's putting all of their eggs into live service? Or do you think that, you know, it's a great move and that they're going to always dominate Microsoft? Say out down in the comments below. Thank you for tuning in. This has been our 200th episode. It's been a wild ride. Hopefully there's going to be another 200 more. My name is Christopher Connell with 11 Hour Reviews, and that will be all for today.